Okay, this is not the best news that we could have hoped for. Tesla in Germany is having a bit of an issue. Locals voted against factory expansion plans. However, there's one big caveat. Even though there were almost 3,500 votes against and only 1,880 votes in favor, which was equal to around 70% in terms of a turnout rate, because Tesla's factory is not actually located in Berlin, it's just outside of Berlin in a small town, is why the number of people voting is not in hundreds of thousands. But this vote is actually a non-binding public survey that was conducted by local authorities. Tesla is planning to build a rail freight depot and storage facilities and on-site kindergarten for employees' children. It argues this will reduce burdens on other freight rail facilities and also allow it to recruit more. The extra warehouse space would also improve supply security. Recently, the facility was forced to pause production as a result of shipping disruptions in the Red Sea. But to accomplish all of that, roughly 250 acres of forest in the rural community of fewer than 8,000 residents near a nature conservation area would need to be removed. However, the regional minister seems to be rather supportive of Tesla, but he says that Tesla's plans need to be fine-tuned first. So a few important things to keep in mind is, number one, the vote was for the acquisition of additional land, and the additional land was mostly for a logistics hub and not for additional manufacturing, so Tesla production expansion is not affected by the vote. Even though the vote is not legally binding, several officials before the outcome of the vote was known said they would vote in line with the results of the vote. Also, the community was somewhat concerned about water, but Rohan from Tesla says the zoning changes have nothing to do with water. There's no need for additional water for any potential expansion at the site. Giga Berlin is one of the most water-efficient vehicle factories on Earth, with the ability to recycle 100% of processed water. It's also not widely known, but in the direct vicinity, our team, Tesla, has worked with local environmental organizations to ecologically uplift 340 hectares of hardwood forests, making them more diverse and resilient, in addition to the afforestation of more than 300 hectares of new forests. I like these comments from the Tesla team directly. Anyway, Tesla does not seem to have been very welcome in Germany, and there's always some pushback and there are always issues. I would generally expect that to continue. But despite all of these efforts against Tesla, Tesla is successfully producing Model Ys in Germany. So it doesn't mean that this is actually a really big issue for Tesla. It's certainly an issue, but I don't think it's really that bad. Whatever issues Tesla will have in Berlin, I'm pretty sure Tesla will overcome all of them. Here's the model mix of Tesla's deliveries in China for the last week. You can see that the ratio is pretty much the same as before. We got a really cool clip from Arthur X about FSD Beta 12. FSD is on, by the way. You can see the blue circle.
Okay, here's the alley again. Wow, look at that. All right, so
to save you some time, here's a summary of what happened. He set the destination to a random alley in downtown Sacramento, which is in California. The car pulls into the alley, driving slow. Based on his previous experiences, he says earlier in the drive, it appears to be looking for a spot. Seems like it couldn't find one it could fit into. Instead of stopping in the middle of the roadway, how V11 would have performed, the car rerouted itself around the block and back into the alley. When it gets back into the alley, it immediately parks into a parking stall instead of proceeding all the way to the destination. This is exactly what I would have done if I was driving. After seeing there was no parking spots the first time, I would have driven around the block and parked in the first available spot I could find. I now believe that actually smart summon is certainly possible with V12. because basically that's exactly what just happened there.
All right, check that out. From the airport to the curb.
And it's not in a no parking.
Yeah, 0 interventions from the airport to your hotel in San Francisco.
This was yet another 20-minute drive. FSD 12, 0 interventions. This just seems to be too common now. It's like, oh yeah, we've seen that, and yet many people are not really understanding what's happening. Maybe it's no big deal to see one drive like this. Okay, yeah, but we have been seeing so many now. Of course, it's California and Tesla has more data there, which means when Tesla gets more data from other places, these other places will also work just as well as this one. And the better it works, the more data Tesla will get faster because more people will be using it more often. And Omar basically says that all other versions were trash, and it's good we're finally admitting. Omar says yes to that. By the way, if you have been a subscriber from day one, the first videos that I reviewed from Omar had like a major intervention once every 1 minute. Often, not always, but often. And these interventions, I mean, some of them were a little scary. You're not seeing that at all anymore. Certainly, there's no intervention once every minute anymore. I cannot wait to have FSD V12 here in Canada. I don't have very high expectations though, because I assume it works much better in California, but it will be really good to see if it can actually really, for real, park, which seems to be the case. I am really excited. Gary Black just gave his more detailed Tesla stock expectations at $194 and Tesla trading at 63 times 2024 earnings per share. We expect Tesla stock to trade in its recent 180 to 210 range until investors see evidence that auto gross margins have bottomed and the destructive price cuts of 2023 won't repeat. But you could have other things happen too, like FSD V12 getting another point release, and all of a sudden someone does a 10-hour drive without any interventions, and then other people replicate that. Do you think that would not move the stop price at all if you saw 30 people replicating that? Gary says, we don't see a ton of value yet from Robotaxi or Optimus, upon which many investors' sky-high price targets are based. We see the fully ramped Cybertruck and $25,000 next-generation vehicle as significant value contributors. Finally, we expect Elon Musk to learn from last year's mistakes and adopt a longer-term view about how to grow volume with less dependence on price cuts and greater focus on education and communications that convince ICE owners to convert to EVs. And there's a bit of a disagreement between Alexandra and Gary. Gary says that FSD needs to drive 99.9% of the time for Wall Street to attach any significant value to FSD, which would be, imagine driving for 99 minutes and then 54 seconds without intervention. So if you have an hour, 40-minute drive, only about 6 seconds during that drive you are not driving with FSD. That's the kind of performance that Gary wants to see before adding significant value to Tesla's valuation, specifically attached to FSD. Currently, when Tesla cuts prices, everyone just drops their earnings per share estimates, but they do not change their volume projections.